At 2003 a.m., my phone tried to fire me. Every account I owned suddenly wanted a new password, email, code repo, cloud, bank, all flashing the same thin little prompt that asks if I requested the change. I was on a hotel carpet 3 time zones from home, blazer on, demo script open, breathing through the kind of calm you practice on days when your company depends on a USB stick and a smile. Calm is not the absence of panic. It is a pen in a notebook. I wrote the date, the time, and one sentence in black ink. He finally did it. My name is Adrian Chen, 32, co-founder and CTO of Brightline, a small Denver startup that teaches power grids to keep their cool when heat waves try to melt them. I write code and diagrams and, when necessary, the kind of emails that end friendships. My co-founder, Liam Hale, was supposed to be the public face, the one who could turn a graph into a promise and a promise into a room that nodded on schedule. We met 3 years ago in a friend's noisy Capitol Hill kitchen full of coats on a bed and not enough forks. He was explaining the 2011 Texas blackout to someone who thought Transformers only belong in movies. He got the sequence slide. He laughed, handed me a marker, and made space at his imaginary whiteboard. We stayed up until 2 arguing about whether lines fail because of physics or people. The answer lives in the overlap. 2 weeks later, we were in a borrowed conference room with coffee that tasted like regret, sketching the bones of a system that could see a neighborhood heating up like a hairdryer and nudge it cooler before anything tripped. I brought the math and the paranoia. He brought introductions and optimism. It felt like a fair split. Our first pilot was with a tiny cooperative where the operations guy also plowed snow. We stood in a substation at a January dawn, everything humming like a memory, and watched our model predict a spike 10 minutes before the baseboard heaters kicked the line into a sulk. The ops guy, Mark, beard frosted white, poured coffee into a paper cup and said, "If your box keeps my guys from getting called at 3 a.m., I'll knit it a sweater." When the curve on my screen flattened right where it should, Liam high-fived me hard enough to sting. Back then, we shared a desk and one plotting library license we could barely afford. We argued about variable names and whether the login page should feel serious or People said we were opposites, so we must complete each other. Opposites do not always complete. Sometimes they orbit until gravity chooses a favorite. We almost made it. Then Liam met money. 7 months before the password storm, a VC firm that loves to say value, add more than it loves to do it, wired us a seed round. Their partner, Veronica, wore hunger like perfume. She promised meetings we could not land ourselves and delivered exactly half, which is how venture often works when you are not famous yet. The cash gave us runway. The meetings gave Liam new friends. He started going to dinners where you pretend not to notice who paid the bill. He started using the word scale like a prayer. I noticed shifts that look small until they are not. The slide I kept current with outage statistics became the slide he cut for vibes. Sprint reviews turned into performances for people who prefer metaphors to metrics. One night after we closed a pilot with a mid-size utility, I found a deck on his laptop titled Brightline Without Baggage. The team slide had one headshot, not mine. Saving a version for a different audience? I asked, already knowing questions like that are not really questions. He closed the laptop like people close doors on strangers. Investors get confused when there are too many cooks, he said. It is just positioning. It looks a lot like positioning me out of the kitchen. He laughed in that TED Talk cadence he had started practicing. Don't be dramatic, Adrian. You hate these meetings anyway. He was not completely wrong. I love the part of the job where the server room hums like a promise. I love the midnight call from an operator whose old substation has a fever and the way our model points fans like a compass. I do not love cocktail hours where the menu is equity, but I can read a cap table and a calendar. He started taking meetings without me and answering questions I should have been asked. I wrote it down in the notebook. Writing is a way to boil slower. This is the paragraph in Internet Stories where you learn the founders were secretly dating. We were not. He brought his ambition to work. I brought my whole self and learned the difference. He had a smile that got parking tickets forgiven. My mother taught me to keep receipts. When we closed the seed, I insisted on 2 boring things, code escrow and dual control on the cloud. Escrow means if one of us gets hit by a bus or decides to drive the bus, our customers can still keep the lights on. Dual control means no one person's bad day becomes everyone's disaster. Liam said it was overkill. I said it was rent. He signed. I filed the paperwork. I set up second factor on a physical key that lives in a safe my grandmother once used to hide mahjong tiles. I put a sticker of a smiling dumpling on it because you deserve joy even when you are hiding keys. So when the password prompts started dancing without me, I pressed no, opened my VPN, and watched someone who looked exactly like Liam try to force his way through systems he should have been able to stroll through. There was a new SSO provider I had not approved. Our domain registrar pinged me about a transfer to a company Liam incorporated 3 weeks earlier, Brighter Line LLC. I screenshotted everything and forwarded it to our lawyer, Maya, with 3 words, escrow, trigger, now. Then I called our ops lead, Diego, who dislikes phone calls unless the building is actually on fire. He picked up on the second ring. "Did you ask to rotate any secrets?" I said. "What did he do?" he said. I told him. He exhaled like a parent watching a toddler sprint toward a pool. "I'm putting the cluster in read-only and locking the pipeline," he said. "If anyone ships without a ticket, they ship in their dreams." "Do you have the token?" "On my keychain," he said. "I will sleep under the rack if I have to." "Go home," I said. "Take the token. If he shows up with 2 very tall men who call themselves advisors, call me first and the police second." At 9 a.m., I was slated to pitch to a consortium of Western utilities that still fax outage notices, but can swing a budget when the hills catch fire. Liam texted at 7:13, "Missed my alarm, start without me." I stood on stage alone and told the story of heat and lines and math. The demo ran off an offline build I had burned to a USB. I had told no one about, because sometimes being paranoid is just being correct too early. An hour later I had 3 "Let's talk" emails from people who decide whether peaker plants nap or wake up angry. I also had a forwarded calendar invite to a private Zoom I was not on. Subject: Brightline Transition Plan. I walked to the hotel business center, borrowed a stapler like armor, printed the escrow confirmation, and called Maya on speaker. "He filed a board consent to remove you as CTO," she said. He forged Diego's signature. "Veronica's fund wants the IP in a NUCO he controls. They are very confident." "They are very bad at reading the small font parts of contracts," I said. "Is the escrow agent awake?" "Wired awake," she said. "They verified the conditions. Since he attempted to transfer the domain and repo without counter-signature, the agent will notify customers and the board that code can be released to an interim custodian if either founder is unreachable for 30 days or an emergency committee agrees sooner." "We are reachable," I said. "We just reached each other with knives." Maya, patient as a glacier, said, "Adrian, you can be the adult or the dragon. Which one gets us more of the company?" "Both," I said. "The right answer is often a sandwich." I did not talk to Liam that day. He sent one text that could have been an apology if it contained a verb. "You'll be fine," he wrote. "This is better for scale." I replied with a photo of the escrow letter so he would understand how not fine this was about to be. By noon, Veronica called. "Adrian, there has been a misunderstanding." "There has," I said. "You misunderstood the part where we have bylaws." "We are prepared to offer you a generous package to step aside and let Liam lead," she said. "Package like it came with the petting zoo." "We are prepared to offer you a generous opportunity to avoid being named in our demand letter," I said. "Unwind whatever you tried in the last 12 hours, return the domains, and put in writing that you will not touch the codebase. Then we will all blame caffeine and move on. You do not have leverage." "I have logs," I said. "I have customers. I have a token you cannot fake. And I have a lawyer who loves injunctive relief more than you love offsites." Phones do not slam in 2025, but I heard one anyway. Here is what Liam did not know. 6 weeks earlier, when he had started forgetting to CC me on emails about strategy and realignment, I asked Diego to scatter honey tokens through our systems, fake secrets that whisper when touched. One looked like an AWS key and only ever emailed me. One looked like a private link to a draft customer list and resolved to a PDF that said, "This is awkward." The canary sang at 2004 a.m. from an IP range used by Veronica's fund, the same network, 6 portfolio companies, and, apparently, a tweeting coffee machine share. I am not saying Veronica moved the mouse. The board met the next day in a room that smelled like fear washed with lemon. Our independent director, Priya, a former COO who believes in receipts, sat at the head like a principal you want to impress. Veronica wore white and opened. "We need stability," she said. "The market rewards decisive leadership. Liam has the relationships to close a Series A." Priya looked at me. "Can you keep the lights on?" "I can keep the lights on," I said. "I can also prove Liam tried to transfer Brightline IP to an entity he alone controls. I can prove a forged signature. I can show this fund accessed our systems without authorization, and if necessary, I can ship a fork under a new name by Monday and call every pilot with a migration plan." "That last option is nuclear," Maya said from the wall. "True, but nuclear." "The grid deals with heat by shedding load," I said. "We will shed load if we have to." Liam, who either had decency or poor instincts, attended. He spread his hands. "Adrian is brilliant," he said. "He just does not see the big picture. We need aggression." I moved quickly because the window was right now. Priya nudged her glasses like sighting a target. "You mean the window to take assets from your own company?" "It was not taking, it was placing assets where they could be used." "By you," I said. "By us," he insisted, as if pronouns were a shelter. Priya called for a vote to form an emergency committee to oversee operations for 30 days, pending investigation. She appointed herself and Walt, a retired utility exec who speaks fluent outage. Veronica voted no. The motion passed anyway. Liam was told to take a vacation. He wore the expression of a man who mistook a mirror for a window and then walked through it. I flew home and slept 10 hours with the token under my pillow, like the tooth fairy has a cousin named Governance. Diego texted a picture of the rack with a sticky note. "Locked because we love you." I cried in the server room. That is an old tradition in our industry. The investigation found what we knew and what we hoped was not true. Liam had funneled small contracts to a consultancy he secretly owned, then marked them up when Brightline paid. He promised Veronica he could move fast on IP if the round went wobbly. He tried to sell a new demo to a competitor using our code with someone else's logo. The competitor forwarded the email. Competitors are not saints. They simply enjoy messy enemies. Maya filed 2 things in 2 courts with similar names that do very different work. Veronica hired a PR firm that said, "Visionary 4 times a minute." Priya asked whether I could run the company if she found a COO who loves people and budgets. I said yes, if someone else owns coffee and the calendar. Her name was Sloan. Energy of a golden retriever, memory of an archivist. She made me explain the product in less than 2 minutes, like she was late for lunch. She called every pilot and promised their dashboards would not turn into pumpkins. When a giant utility CTO sniffed and asked if we were stable, she said, "Our math does not break up with us." I decided to follow her anywhere. The next stretch was not triumph. The court returned our domains quickly, but the bank froze an account and the clerk who could thaw it went on vacation. We missed payroll by a day. I swallowed pride and asked my mother for a short loan, because survival often fits between approval and deposit. Stress gave me shingles. I named the rash Liam and pretended that helped. I took the token to bed like a talisman and put my phone in the freezer once because alerts can make a brain feel like an overclocked CPU. Then the gradient changed. Priya convinced a different fund to replace Veronica's seat. They wanted governance more than gossip. The escrow agent, haloed like a saint, confirmed to customers that Brightline's code would not vanish in a puff of executive ambition. 2 pilots converted. A union of line workers posted a photo of our alert next to a melted insulator with the caption, "This helped." That picture did more for our Series A than any bow tie at a steakhouse. Exactly 3 months after the passwords tried to mutiny, we settled. Liam kept his shares, lost his title and board seat. Veronica resigned to spend more time at the off-site, which is how the internet says, because receipts. Her fund sold half its position to the new one at a discount with the strained smile you see on dentists and defendants. Priya stayed as chair. Sloan became COO for real. I said yes to CEO and did not die. At 2003 a.m., after the settlement, Liam sent a final email. "People who love drama love clocks. No hard feelings," he wrote. "Remember, I built this with you." I left it unread, then printed it and tucked it under the date in my notebook. Some papers are receipts, some are compost. This one will be good soil. 2 weeks later, a reporter called about a whistleblower letter claiming Brightline used unlicensed code. Attached was a Git diff of open-source libraries with our changes circled like a crime scene. The accusation was technically tidy and morally lazy. We had complied with every license and contributed back. But a scandal is any headline that lands. Diego found the source in an hour. The diff came from a fork Liam took home the night he tried the transfer. He cherry-picked a commit that made us look non-compliant and left out the part where we had approved and published under the same license. He sent it from a Proton Mail address that looked like a teenage gamer tag. He also left metadata on a screenshot. People who believe they are smarter than paper forget that paper has a memory. We did not sue again. Priya asked what I wanted. "I want to ship," I said. "I want to stand in front of operators who roll their eyes at my joke and install the update anyway because it keeps their lines cool." "Then ship," she said. We shipped. The scandal fizzled like a spark on wet grass. Sloan brought cupcakes. Diego labeled the token drawer, "not a snack." I wrote the best customer email of my life without using the word journey once. It would be cleaner to say I slept well forever after. I did not. Sometimes at 2003 a.m., my hands remember saying no to a screen that thinks it is owed my yes. Sometimes I wake hearing a phantom alert. The body learns new hours slowly. 6 months later, on a Wednesday that started with hail and ended with a double rainbow that looked edited by someone who wanted a tip, we signed our Series A with the fund that replaced Veronica. Clause 12, line 4, became my favorite sentence in corporate law. The CEO controls the domain registrar. Sloan copied it in glitter pen on the framed term sheet. We moved to a bigger office with a view of a river that looks like ambition if you catch it at the right angle. Priya's photo went on the wall. Above the rack, we pinned a printed sticky note that reads, "Locked because we love you." Visitors smile. Engineers nod. We started an apprenticeship for line workers' kids who want to write software the power company actually uses. I teach a class called Governance is Love and make 22-year-olds put a YubiKey on their keychains and promise never to say "move fast" without also saying with a rollback plan. Last week, a utility in Arizona mailed us a thank you on paper, which felt like a hug from 1987. "Your pre-cooling recommendation probably saved us an outage," they wrote. "The crews got to go home." I brought the note to my mother, who keeps a drawer of my clippings like talismans. She touched the paper and said, "You kept your receipts." I said, "I kept my token," and we laughed longer than the joke deserved. If you are waiting for the apology, bring a chair. Liam started something new with a name that sounds like a Blender setting and a tagline that reads like it was focus grouped by a mirror. Veronica writes LinkedIn essays about hard lessons that contain no nouns. Friends send screenshots with popcorn emojis. I do not reply. I do not have time for reruns when the live show is this good. The night before we switched on a new predictive feature for a high desert utility, I took out the token and looked at the dumpling sticker. Somewhere, a transformer would get as hot as a feeling, and our math would tell someone to touch it with a gloved hand before it glowed. Somewhere, a person would sleep because a line of code held. I put the token away and opened the notebook to the first page where I had written, "He finally did it." I added another sentence in blue ink. So did I. At 5:07 a.m. the next morning, a crew chief emailed a sunrise photo to support with a caption, "Your alert was 10 minutes early." 10 minutes is the difference between getting yelled at and getting breakfast. Diego printed it and taped it to the rack. Sloan framed a copy for the front desk. Priya sent 3 clapping emojis and a link to a governance article because she cannot help herself. I pinned my copy into the notebook beside the receipts. That night, the building lights clicked off in polite halves, and I sat in the dark a minute longer than necessary. The internet prefers revenge arcs. The story I get is continuity. Devotion is not dramatic. It is expensive, daily, and worth it. 2 days later, an email came from a high school teacher in the mountains who had read about our apprenticeship. One of her students, a kid who stays late to fix the shop's cranky CNC, wanted to apply but did not think kids like him end up in rooms like ours. I wrote back that rooms like ours do not exist without kids like him. We gave him a slot. He starts in June. He will get a badge in the U-Bikey and a chair with a squeaky lever that quiets only if you threaten it. He will learn that math is another word for keeping people safe. He will learn that good systems outlast excitement. He will learn that reliability is a kind of love you can hold if you do the boring parts right. If Liam is watching, I hope he learns what I learned the hard way. A company is not a stage. It is a set of agreements you honor on days when applause would not show up even if you bribed it. A kill switch is not revenge. It is love for the people who depend on you to be boring when someone else decides to be exciting. At 2:03 a.m. last night, my phone stayed dark. This morning, the grid did not collapse. Somewhere, a line worker laced boots. Somewhere, a mother ran a dishwasher. Somewhere, an operator rolled their eyes and clicked approve on a plan we wrote. I poured coffee and did not check my passwords until after breakfast. I still keep the token in the safe with my grandmother's tiles. I still keep the notebook. I still write the things that hurt and the things that held. If you ever need a title for a story like this, do not call it betrayal. Call it a system test we passed.